Hey, thanks for checking out my latest video. This is Moby from the Not So Narrowcast. We're going to take a quick look today at differences in the average draft position for best ball on DraftKings and Underdog to see what we can glean from the differences in them. And please remember, subscribe to the channel for more content, like the videos and comment on them so they can get seen by more people. Thanks. So quarterbacks. Now what we have to remember is that DraftKings is a full PPR league with bonuses for 300 yards passing, 100 yards rushing, 100-yard receiving. Underdog is half PPR. This basically in effect makes Underdog more touchdown important, DraftKings more reception important. It also slightly gives a benefit to DraftKings for pocket passers because they can throw for touchdown. They can throw for 300 yards more likely, and they get a bonus for that. Also for basically for wide receivers in general, while Underdog being touchdown dependent a little more makes running backs and tight ends slightly more valuable on there, which is ironic because in actuality, on Underdog, people tend to chase the wide receivers more than they do on DraftKings, where they tend to chase the running backs and quarterbacks more. There's also sort of a perception of that. There's also sort of a perception that Underdog has smarter drafters and more sweats, meaning more serious best ball players who are, absorbing a lot of information. And to some degree that's true, and that DraftKings drafts are more unpredictable. To some degree that's true, but there's good and bad in both. The DraftKings ones being unpredictable, although both can be unpredictable, that can make more opportunities to build really good teams and also unique combinations. Sometimes on Underdog they almost work together too much, and then people are going to end up with a lot of the same stacks and whatnot. And there's also quite a bit of groupthink there. But let's just take a quick look at the quarterback differences. So on these we have the DraftKings ADP, and I captured the latest data. I think DraftKings ADP may adjust quicker, and they may update it quicker, and also may just adjust a little faster. I'm not sure. That could depend on what time frame they're calculating it on or various things. But nonetheless, this is good to use, especially if you're playing both sites like I am. I do more on DraftKings. I think I've completed over 250 drafts at this point between the sites, and you can see the differences between them. I actually like to average the two sometimes for rankings. When I change my rankings around, use different methods, but one way is to average the two instead of just using ADP. But of course this can be slanted for various reasons, but nonetheless, on the quarterbacks, they tend to go earlier on DraftKings. This is something to keep in mind if you're transitioning from Underdog to DraftKings, is you need to grab your quarterbacks. So you can see here, like Goff goes 102 on DraftKings, he goes 117 on Underdog. That's a difference of 15.5. That's over a round. All of these quarterbacks go like a round earlier on DraftKings. So again, you have to grab your quarterbacks if you need them, and if you need them for a stack. But what you will notice is these are all basically pocket passers. So that kind of is logical, that with DraftKings being a little bit more of a pocket passer league in its scoring, that the players would bid up those more than relative to other quarterbacks. So here's the ones that are the least difference, or Underdog has a higher draft position relative to DraftKings, but you can see the worst. I mean, the worst of them, or the biggest difference, they're actually about the same. But so we have Goff, Mahomes, Burrow, Darnold, Rodgers, and Mayfield. Oh, and again, now DraftKings is 20 rounds and Underdog is 18 rounds. DraftKings, it is much, much more likely that people pick 3 quarterbacks and 3 tight ends than they do on Underdog, although that has been growing in popularity on Underdog. So that can affect some of the ADPs for the late tight ends and the late quarterbacks. So I didn't include like Shuck and some other guys on here who have a bigger difference in ADP. But you can see here, Drake May is one of the only ones where he's actually going higher on Underdog than DraftKings. They also on Underdog tend to like younger players and rookies more than they do on DraftKings. DraftKings tends to like veterans more. That can go along with what I was saying about them being sweats, or the more serious players, but sometimes those people aren't always correct. If you look at last year with Derrick Henry and Barkley, for example. But nonetheless, this does to me indicate that May is a good bargain on DraftKings, which I already thought he was. Mahomes is overpriced on DraftKings, which I already thought he wasn't. Got very little of him. I tend to view the group from Mahomes on down to like the mid-late quarterbacks almost as one tier. There's upper portions of the tier, but if you need to get Bo Nix or you need to get Trevor Lawrence or Stroud or Love, I mean, reaching for them is not a big deal in my opinion this year. But Drake May is actually going for less. It could be that they're bidding him up a little too much on there, but if you compare him to Goff, he's going 15 spots later than Goff on DraftKings. So May looks a bargain on there. Purdy going the same on both. He's hard to get on Underdog. They bid him up, possibly going a little high on there relative to the other ones. Trevor's going about the same. So this one I would say DraftKings might be a little bit behind the curve on that, so he might be a better bargain on DraftKings. I also have the averages listed here. Richardson on Indiana is an interesting one because he goes 191.7. He goes very late on DraftKings, but he actually goes the same on Underdog, which this indicates to me, I don't have the exact percentage of how many times that the late quarterbacks are drafted, but that indicates to me he's getting drafted a lot. And they're chasing him up. I believe his ADP on Underdog is above Daniel Jones, which I think is a mistake. And that's some people, of course, banking on a spike games and end of the year spike games, but I think there's a decent possibility that Daniel Jones holds the job the whole year. And Richardson hasn't had many games like that in his career, so I would prefer Daniel Jones. Jalen Hurts goes about the same as well, as does Daniels, two of the elite quarterbacks that have rushing aspects to them. So you see Burrow goes around later on Underdog, but these guys go about the same. This makes sense to me. I think Underdog's got the right picture here. Burrow goes too high on DraftKings because people want to stack him with Chase, Higgins, etc. Some people just take him naked early. I do like Burrow this year, but if you just compare that, Mahomes and Burrow go too early. Probably Baker too. Let's look at the running backs. Again, being PPR, full PPR, that's points per reception, while Underdog is half PPR. Pass catching backs have an advantage or more, better basically for DraftKings, and that should be reflected in the ADPs to some degree. But what you can really kind of see here is that that the older veteran running backs who aren't necessarily very explosive and don't catch a lot of passes necessarily, are going higher on DraftKings, which could be somewhat of a mistake. Now, like take Kareem Hunt, this ADP means quite a few times I believe he's not even getting drafted on Underdog. So it's 24 points different, 2 rounds difference of where he goes on there. Chubb, a round and a half difference. Chubb could be a good play this year if he's healthy, but we don't know that. Javonte Williams on Dallas, I actually think he is a decent play at when you can get him for low prices. If you need a guy who's expected to get carries in the early part of the year, but he's going around cheaper on DraftKings. Kamara, he can be a PPR guy, so that would explain somewhat him going higher on DraftKings. He also is older, which could explain that as well. I'm not a huge fan of Kamara this year compared to some of the guys around him, so I'd be more here. I like some of the guys around him better. Justice Hill on Baltimore, a backer with a limited upside who is a PPR guy, so that sort of explains him going about around higher. I haven't taken much of him this year. Aaron Jones, he's older. There's a lot of hype that Mason's going to take a lot of his work. I don't necessarily buy into that, so I have been acquiring some Aaron Jones as like a third running back or second if desperate. especially if you're trying to get 3 good running backs and 3 good wide receivers, basically, before you take a quarterback or tight end, which is something I do fairly often. Anyway, he's going, 3/4 of a round, 8 picks before on DraftKings. I would lean more to DraftKings there. Jaden Blue on Dallas. This one's kind of interesting because he is a rookie that's got hype and a path to being good, but the sort of common wisdom is that he's not that good of a prospect and compared to Tootin. So some of the smarks on DraftKings, on Underdog, have not been drafting him as high. They could end up getting burned by this, but if you look at Tootin going the same ADP on DraftKings, then that's way too low. I mean, he's going up here. I mean, there's kind of no doubt that Tootin is better, a better prospect in my opinion, and a better situation. But the Dallas Cowboys running back room is so poor that Blue being fast might be enough to get him some play and potentials for putting up some points. Then we have Roddy White on Tampa. He catches passes, so that would explain him being a little bit higher on Tampa. I think there is a small possibility that him or Tucker gets traded because they basically have 2 good backups, and somebody may want one of them. Just something to keep in mind. I was using the sidekick to draft on DraftKings today, and it actually popped Sean Tucker as an idea for the last round, and I took him with having another Tampa Bay player in a correlation. Now onto this, the side of where they're taking players earlier. So you can see these go between like 7 and 24 picks earlier on DraftKings. These go between 10 and 13 picks earlier on Underdog. So there is some discrepancy on the running backs more than the quarterbacks. This Judkins ADP, now this could have to do with Underdog not updating their ADPs as quickly, which is something the users should know, especially because a lot of people pick off ADP. So this is why looking at the average in some cases is better. I'm not buying him even at this price, but I definitely not at this price currently. But he's going around earlier according to this on Underdog. The rest of these, a lot of these are quality backups. Guys that are already sort of proven it or have a really good clear role as the backup in a good situation. Again, some of these are more vets who have floor. So they like the backups a little more, like Algier, Trey Benson, Giddens, Shipley, Ray Davis. And then you have Miles Sanders, who I have a ton of him because it's possible he is getting a big share of the workload in Dallas and is just plays better than Javonte Williams, and he's going, 50 to 80 slots lower, so he's a much lower draft capital risk, and he's got some PPR. So the Underdog people are taking him around earlier than DraftKings. That's sort of Underdog players being smart, in my opinion. And again, I mentioned the Tootin Blue thing. They both could end up being good picks, but they should not be going for the same ADP. Now here he's going almost 2 rounds earlier. Giddens, the promising one for the Colts, rookie should have the inside role, and people are forgetting about him on DraftKings. Yeah, you don't want to get too focused on floor in the late rounds on running back unless you feel like you need floor or you need some vets. You kind of want to be shooting for those rookies or those high upside second-year guys, even third-year guys. Even like a guy like Corum on the Rams. Now, Jaquez Hunter is going high, but with this early, with training camp just getting ready to start, we don't know yet. Corum could be the guy who gets some actual playing time and could be the main backup. We don't know for sure. Kendre Miller's another one on the Saints. There's a rookie there, but he was a late pick. And with Kamara being older and getting banged up, he could be another one. So it's not just rookies. Shipley's another one in a real nice position, being on Philly and looking to be the primary backup who may actually get some just PPR time on his own. And with Barkley's workload and whatnot, and if they pass more, so he's going about a round higher. I do like him. Benson hasn't really proved anything yet. Algier has proven himself as a nice, tough football player, I'd say, with limited upside. And Ray Davis. Now there is Ty Johnson on the Bills, so something to keep in mind. And Underdog, they don't like Cook as much. I think he's just one of the most explosive, put together football players to score points. So workload isn't quite as big a concern for me. To me, he's moving more towards the Achan Gibbs level than anyone than to be down. If you get what I'm saying, coming into this year. Wide receivers. Wide receivers tend to go earlier on Underdog, which again is sort of odd because the scoring benefits wide receivers more on DraftKings. Not quite as touchdown dependent. However, the Underdog drafters realize that there's a limited pool of wide receivers that have decent upside. So the difference is here. They're taking Adam Thielen about 2 rounds earlier on DraftKings. That is an avoid to me when you consider Leggett is going 2 rounds later. It's the exact opposite on Underdog, which is strange too. So probably want to be somewhere in the middle. Like if the average ADP on them is equal, you can evaluate on your own which one you want for that team. He obviously is younger with upside, but he's a proven vet who should put up points, especially early in the year. He has more competition for targets. However, Leggett gave me a vibe of a guy who's going to be a successful NFL player. Maybe a little bit of DK Metcalf vibes, and the guy's got a lot of charisma. McMillan on Tampa is going about a round earlier than Underdog. I'm actually warming up to him because I've gotten basically zero of him, and until recently when I'm realizing the Godwin injury is worse than I think it is. Then you have another rookie out there, Egbuka. So McMillan did play well last year when he had the chance to play. So for me to be completely ignoring him is a mistake on a good offense. Hopkins on the Ravens, DeAndre, is going about a round lower than Underdog. Now, again, I mentioned they don't like the olds. They don't like the senior citizens on Underdog. However, Hopkins is a touchdown guy who could be a touchdown merchant, so that may be a little too low on him. Kupp is an interesting one because I think he is not washed and will have a big year with Seattle, but there's a decent possibility he is washed and sort of permanent injured. However, he makes sense that he would go higher on here. He's old, but also he is a PPR guy, going about a round higher. And I've actually ended up drafting him a little too much on Underdog when he slips, and I need a 4th or 5th receiver. Calvin Austin on the Steelers, again going a round higher. Basically, I do think he has a possibility for some good spike games this year. He's one of the only really explosive players that will be on the Steelers, and I think they can find a role for him. So I have no problem snapping him up late. He's been going earlier, quicker than he did before, though. I was getting him in the last round on DraftKings for a while. Wan'Dale Robinson, a notorious PPR merchant, but a good football player, believe it or not. He hasn't really been in the best situation, the best play calling. I think the Giants' offense is going to be better this year. You have him, you obviously have Neighbors, and you have Slayton. Then you have 2 running backs, and you have Theo Johnson. Then if Russell Wilson gives good quarterback play or somewhat good fantasy play, with the possibility of Jackson Dart coming in later in the year, I can definitely see them being improved. I could see Russell Wilson or Daniel Jones keeping the jobs the whole year if, like the Giants, were in a playoff race. But Jackson Dart is a good, 3rd quarterback late round throw because he does have running and he is such a high draft pick. But Wan'Dale, I've gotten it. I always get some of him because I primarily was doing DraftKings best ball. Pierce on the Colts, I don't really like him. He's a long ball merchant, and if Daniel Jones is the quarterback, then he's not going to have much of a role, and A.D. Mitchell may be getting or usurping him. Now, if you think Richardson is going to be the quarterback, then Pierce might be a good one because he threw like 80-yard bombs to him last year. I'm going a little bit higher on DraftKings. Keenan Allen, I'm going a little higher on DraftKings. I'm avoiding him right now. He says he's talking to teams and will sign somewhere, but we don't really know. We don't know what he has left. And if he does come back, he'll be a touchdown merchant. I don't know if he'd even be much better than D-Hop, depending on the situation. There were jokes that he might sign with the Chargers and retire. Guys going higher on Underdog. Ayuk, again, this looks like it hasn't updated quick enough to me, but he's going 2 rounds earlier based on what the numbers they're reporting for ADP currently. I would not be getting him here. I was avoiding Ayuk like the plague. I have started to dip my toe in around this 100 level. Burden on the Bears. This is an example, in my opinion, of DraftKings guys overlooking potentially a really good rookie who could have good PPR points as well. So he's going 2 rounds earlier on Underdog. They definitely get more excited on the whole about rookies on Underdog. Palmer on the Bills. I feel like the DraftKings drafters are overlooking this one. They're taking D-Hop at the same level as Palmer. I own a lot of Palmer. Is he risky? Yes. Could he be the second leading receiver of any sort other than Shakir and to some degree Cook on Buffalo? Yes. He could be the second leading points getter among the receivers and tight ends. We don't know for sure yet. Good late round throw. He's going 2 rounds earlier, though, now on Underdog. That seems to be getting a little pricey. Tutu Atwell on the Rams. According to this, he's not getting drafted every time on the Rams, which I believe I have seen that occur. If he's going to have that third role on the Rams, and Puka and Devontae aren't super long ball merchants, he's got that speed to have spike games. If this is correct, then you could say he's getting drafted most of the time, or vast majority of the time on Underdog. Pat Bryant on the Broncos, another rookie with high draft capital. I don't necessarily, from what I know of him, think he's that great of a prospect, or that I think the Denver target share could be really widespread out beyond Sutton, who I'm very bullish on. Ingram will get some. I think Mims will get some. Bryant, and then even more guys possibly. So he's going high on there from that, but he's a bit risky to me. But he's going too low on DraftKings. I mentioned Leggett and Thielen, a crazy dichotomy there. Harris on the Chargers, that's a rookie quarterback, a rookie wide receiver I do like, and he's climbing the ranks with Mike Williams retiring. There is Quentin Johnson there still, who could have a good role, and also Kendra Lambert-Smith, who goes. But this is an example of Underdog drafters paying up for a rookie wide receiver that you can get a lot cheaper on DraftKings, who may be good PPR. And then De'Ami Brown, who's one of my favorite late round wide receivers. He's going earlier on Underdog than DraftKings. Seems like a really good late round one that could have upside on Jacksonville. If Travis Hunter's role changes and whatnot, De'Ami Brown could be out there a lot, getting a lot of targets. And he has some ability to put up points when he has in the past. He's going around cheaper on DraftKings. All right, let's take a quick look at the tight ends. With the tight ends, they tend to go quicker on DraftKings, but you also got to remember people are almost always taking 3 of them. So I left out a couple of the real late dart throws, but this might be an example of Underdog not updating their ADP quick enough, which you got to be careful of if you're using ADP as a guide sometimes, because Jonnu Smith is risen back up above Ertz and whatnot, and I think that's a good spot for him. I like him there. He's going to get put up points as in the tight end spot. He seems like one of the more reliable ones to put up points. He's going 2 rounds earlier on DraftKings, according to this reported data. Ertz is going about 2 rounds early. I don't necessarily like that one as much. He's getting older. He's been injury prone. He did have a great year last year. If he does, he's just a little risky to me. And people like to stack him with Daniels. That could be one reason he's higher. If Sanad is a name to keep in mind, if Ertz does start getting banged up or does start looking washed, Sanad seems like a talented guy in waiting, and there are targets available in Washington. Kelsey, along with Mahomes, this is just really bad in my opinion. I don't see the likelihood of Mahomes having a massive pocket passing year to separate him. I don't see Kelsey as being any kind of separator on the tight ends. I would put him closer to the top of the next tier, or even lower than that, where you're looking at guys like Ingram and Njoku, even Hawkinson. I don't have him that high because we haven't seen it yet since he came back from injury. But I would obviously he has probably the top potential of that. I like Laporta separating more likely. Is more probability, I guess you could say. He's going 2 rounds earlier on here. That's a mistake. I would be taking him in this range somewhere. If you really want to build a Mahomes worthy Kelsey or Mahomes Rice Kelsey stack, I've done a couple of them, but I don't like to do it because of the prices. Ingram's going about a round earlier on DraftKings. He may get some good PPR points, but again, the tight ends in general, you can see here that it's kind of like the quarterbacks. The ones that are most extreme to Underdog are just basically going for the same as DraftKings. So tight ends go earlier on DraftKings. Warren going about a round earlier. This one is odd because Warren's going about a round earlier on DraftKings, but Warren's going later on Underdog. So this tells me to some degree that on DraftKings they're avoiding him because of that Q tag, but also he's not getting bid up that much on Underdog. But I would say this is more on DraftKings that he's going 21 picks later because a lot of people think Loveland's actually in a better situation and maybe a better fantasy threat. Njoku going a bit better. I do like Njoku a lot this year. I wouldn't take Warren over him unless you already had a tight end and needed upside, although I have at times. Kincaid going a bit higher on DraftKings. I do think he has some good promise to come in well above his ADP this year. He could be in this whole tier. Henry going lower on DraftKings doesn't make sense to me. He's one of those good second and third tight ends who's steady, who puts up points, who should get targets even now with such an unproven wide receiver room and in New England. Strange going lower on DraftKings makes no sense to me either, or going that low. Going 30 spots below Kincaid makes no sense to me. He could have a really good year for Jacksonville. Pitts going a bit lower. I'm not very bullish on Pitts, but I would almost put Pitts with the Henry class. But again, a little bit puzzling there. I think so many people have been burned by Pitts in the past that some people just won't pick him. It's not fun clicking him. Dalton Schultz going about the same. He goes probably a little too low on DraftKings, but down there you have, Sanders, Theo Johnson, Freiermuth, Juwan Johnson. You have a lot of guys you can grab as your third tight end. So I don't, this maybe just says he has a little more, people like the safety of him a little more on Underdog, or maybe they're taking him as their second tight end. I mentioned Loveland. Ferguson's going about the same. I don't super love Ferguson this year if Pickens and Lamb are healthy. A lot of people like him, but if Pickens and Lamb are healthy, he's all right. He's all right. I guess I wouldn't put him this much above like this group, but I can kind of see it. I like Goddard better than Ferguson. Mason Taylor on the Jets. This is probably an example of that they like rookies on the Jets. He does seem like he has a good situation, but there's questions about how good he'll be coming in as a rookie. A couple others, but they go so late that they're hard to kind of compare because they probably aren't getting drafted on Underdog as much. But Sanders is going a lot later. Should be stepping into a role along with Theo Johnson, young athletic tight ends. Should be stepping into a pretty good role. Definitely on DraftKings, I have a ton of Sanders and Theo Johnson as my third tight ends. Arroyo on Seattle, a rookie who basically now the Seattle tight end spot will be him and A.J. Barner, probably a combo of the two, and they both have a lot of potential. A.J. Barner looked really good last year, and Arroyo's extremely athletic. I wouldn't go overboard freaking out on him, but I've been reaching up some to the 18th round or whatnot, even 17th, just to get some of him in my portfolio, especially if I have a Sam Darnold stack, and he's been a bit ignored on DraftKings still. All right, so keep an eye on those ADPs. It's a not-so-narrowcast channel. My name's Moby. The reason I called it that is I don't just want to narrowcast and do the same subject all the time, although I am doing more just fantasy football and DFS and best ball right now. But thanks for checking out the video. Let's win some money this season or win your trophies. Subscribe to my channel, like the videos, and comment. I would really appreciate it. And thanks for tuning in. Have a good one.